Hi everybody, I'm just some guy, and today I figured I'd talk about some books I actually like. Yeah, I've got all these reviews for books that I can't stand, but I swear those aren't the only books that I buy. I do like comics. I really do. I mean, I just bagged and boarded about 2,000 of them, and nobody hate buys that many comics. So let's get to a book that I actually liked. Mech Cadet U. This book came out a couple of weeks ago. It's written by Greg Pak and drawn by Takeshi Miyazawa. Greg Pak is the guy behind the totally inferior Hulk, the one with Amadeus Cho, and Takeshi worked on the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane comic. Alright, so let's get the first thing out of the way. The book is good. It's not an SJW mess. Greg does have a diverse cast, but it's not overt politics, so don't worry, he keeps it to himself. The art for this book is good. Takeshi seems to have changed his style since the Spider-Man Loves MJ book. It's a little sketchier and a little looser than his older style. I zoomed in on the digital artwork and it looks like the lines may actually be his pencils. If you have a clean art style or at least carefully draw the work, you can usually adjust the pencils in apps like Photoshop to make it look like it's been inked. As long as the lines are really clean and there's no undersketch beneath it or anything like that, you can drop color right over it and it'll look fine. It looks like there wasn't that much cleanup for Takeshi's lines in certain spots, and that's what gives it that sketchy look. Overall though, I like the art. His robot designs are solid and old school. I can tell that he grew up on GoBots and Transformers, and he mentions in the interview at the end of the book that he also grew up on the Gundam series, which inspired his love for mechs and sci-fi, and how could you not love that? Gundam is awesome. What I really like about Takeshi's work is that his visual storytelling is on point. That's one of my pet peeves when it comes to comics. It's a visual medium. You should be able to look at it and follow what's going on without having to read the captions or the word balloons. Takeshi nails that. You can practically read the whole book by just looking at the panels. I also love that he pays attention to the characters' expressions. When a character is talking, he will sometimes draw them with their mouths open like he's caught them in the middle of a word. I love that kind of stuff because it makes it feel more like an animation frame than just a simple comic. Now, let's get to the story. 60 years ago, a robot mech landed from outer space and befriended this boy named Skip Tanaka. Skip and the mech fought off these monsters called the Sarge. He left the planet to take the fight to the Sarge directly, and since then the Sky Corps has carried out preparing kids to be pilots for other robo-mechs. These mechs show up every 4 years for some reason, and the Sky Corps trains the cadets to be ready to pilot them. Our main character is a boy named Stanford Yu who works as a janitor at Sky Corps. He wants to be a cadet, but for some reason isn't allowed into the program. That's where the story starts. Greg Pak does a really good job of setting up Stanford. It's not really clear why he has an English first name and a Chinese surname, but it's not that big of a deal. Even though we don't get a lot about his past or his general life, we do see that he desperately wants to be a pilot and hates working as a janitor. It makes him relatable really quick, something some writers should learn to copy. I also like that his mom speaks Cantonese and he responds in English. It's a little clever way of having them banter. So what happens to Stanford is that his mother tries to talk him out of wanting to be a pilot, and she does it in the most stereotypical Asian mom way, and it's just hilarious. She's like, life is hard and we're on the bottom. The only way to make it is to work 5 times harder than anyone else. And Stanford says he already does that, but he never gets a chance, and she totally shuts him down. She's like, you don't want that kind of chance. Safer on the ground. Just crush his dreams, why don't you? And then she's like, so no crying, and he's totally crying, but he goes, I'm not crying, and he runs off. So of course Stanford mopes around and sees the mechs landing. Now, back at the beginning of the story, we meet this girl named Park, and she's a top student and a total douche. She's got this great line where she says to Stanford and his mom, if you're gonna disrupt the ceremony, you might have the courtesy to do it in English. Just, bitch. I just love that little moment there, and I give Greg credit for making the girl the rival jerk face. Not a very progressive thing to do. Girls are usually the cool ones, the better ones, I don't need no man. Instead, Jerkface Park gets no mech. She's feeling salty. Meanwhile, Stanford stumbles onto her mech, who ends up choosing him because he's got this tiny robot toy in his shirt. They fly away, but get stopped immediately by the Sky Corps, who tries to take the mech from Stanford and arrest the boy. But the day is saved by none other than Skip Tanaka, who's back from space, and much older. So, Jerkface Park, still feeling salty, gets a surprise. A human-controlled, totally not evil-looking version of Ava Unit 1. I mean, look at it. It just says villain. And look at her face. She's like, I wonder how many ways I can pop his head like a fucking pimple. I love that Greg made the rival a girl, and a bad one at that. We don't see that in a lot of stories anymore, and I think it's time to admit that, yeah, some girls are just assholes. It doesn't make you a misogynist to write a character like that. She's an entitled little douche, and we should be able to have fun characters like that. One of my major criticisms of this book, though, is that it moves really fast. It's not bad, it's just that for an intro story, we don't get enough space for some of the story beats. Like when the mech chooses Stanford. It chooses Stanford on one page, and then we get a splash page of them flying. And then on the next page, the Sky Corps shows up to stop them. I'd like to see another page of Stanford getting to enjoy the experience before getting stopped. I'd also like to see another encounter between him and Park, just to establish whether she's just an all-around jerk, or if she specifically doesn't like Stanford. I'd also like to get some scenes with the other two pilots. Nothing long, just some quick moments to at least get their personalities. The other thing is that I think the fact that the general is Park's father could have been made clear. We don't get his name in the text, but it is on his name tag if you look really close. A little exchange with him and Park would have helped too, just to establish what their relationship is really like. A lot of that is probably still to come, but I would have liked it in this issue. That would have made the issue longer, probably by about 10 or 15 pages, but most intro stories to manga are about 50 pages long. And to do what I mentioned, you kind of need that amount of time, so I don't see why we can't do the same thing in American books. Overall, though, this is a pretty good book. It's just the first issue, so we'll have to see where it goes, but it's definitely worth a read. If you got an extra $4 to spend, go ahead, pick it up. Thanks for listening, and if you read the book already, let me know what you think about it in the comments.